Good morning, afternoon, everybody, and a very welcome, big welcome to our ReCirc webinar. I think we have stakeholders joining from the Netherlands, from Singapore, and anything in between to discuss with us resource recovery and how the Netherlands and Singapore have been working in a public-private partnership for the past years in order to set this up and exchange experiences and projects and knowledge across the two countries. So thank you very much for joining. Before introducing our first speaker, I would like to give some cues for this session. At the end of the session, we will have quite some time to run through Q&A. So the speakers that are here today, they're very happy to engage with you in open Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the session, please drop them in the Q&A box so that we can pick them up later. My name is San. I have been working as the liaison of this public-private partnership ReCirc for the past years, and I have the privilege of being the moderator for today. So if there's anything you need me to pick up, please via the Q&A box. Then let's see. To answer any questions on presentation slides, those will be shared for those that are interested after the session, but it would mean that we would need your email addresses because the platform doesn't allow us to see your email addresses. So if you would like to receive the slides, please drop them as well in the chat, and we will make sure to share the slides with you. Furthermore, this webinar is recorded and it will be made available through this platform until August 33rd. So if you are not able to view it completely, please be rest assured it will be available for you for reviewing. Okay, then I see that our first speaker is ready to take the stage. His name is Ruud Splithoff. He's Director of the Environment at the Department of Waterways and Public Works in the Netherlands. And he has been working on sustainable and circular impact and policies at Rijkswaterstaat, as we call it in the Netherlands. What is very relevant to know for this session that he has been a delegate member of the Joint Working Committee for the Memorandum of Understanding between Singapore and the Netherlands, because that Memorandum of Understanding between our both governments has set the structure and the framework for the further development of this public-private partnership. So Ruud, with this, I would like to give you the stage. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm eager to hear your story.
Thank you very much, and good morning, or good day, I would say. It's always an adventure to find the right place in the digital world, so I just arrived. It's my pleasure to kick off this workshop on the topic of ReCirc. First of all, I would like to say that the Netherlands highly values the collaboration with Singapore. Singapore and the Netherlands are similar on many aspects. Relatively small countries, densely populated, living and dealing with water-related issues. And we both are advanced in the own region when it comes to sustainability and circularity. ReCirc, as a public-private partnership, has demonstrated a lot of leads and options for sharing solutions and knowledge. This need for sharing and collaborating can only grow in the years to come. Let our countries continue to collaborate as frontrunners and build the bridge between Asia and Europe as hubs for a sustainable and circular future. It's very important to continue this collaboration, I should say. In this workshop, you will hear more about the progress, the leads and options for collaboration and solutions that are found out. So I would say, please enjoy this anthology of opportunities to work together and creating a better planet for all of us. I wish you all a pleasant workshop.
Ruud, Mr. Splithoff, thank you very much for joining. We know how busy your schedule is, so it's much appreciated to have you here. Wish you a pleasant day.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. With this, I would like to give a brief introduction of what is then ReCirc. Let's see if I can get that on the screen. Yes, I can. So ReCirc has been operating as a public-private partnership, as mentioned. We do so as the Netherlands companies want to enter a new market together. This is one of the approaches that we take. We understand that as a small country, it might be hard to bring across innovative concepts, and that we cannot do it alone as SMEs, or we cannot do it alone as knowledge institutes. We might not be able to do it alone as without the support of our government as well. So the Partners in International Business public-private partnership is a program that runs for most of the time for 3 years, but when COVID should happen, it might take a bit longer, in which business, knowledge institutes and governments work together on a specific subject. In the case of Singapore, the focus was very clear from the beginning. It needed to be about circular economy and about resource recovery in that circular economy. As the Netherlands was already committed to becoming a fully circular country by 2050, we saw that there was this emergence of Singapore trying to also find a concept that would fit its zero waste ambitions. We knew that we could meet on the level of the resources that need to be recovered from the residue streams that we are considering within this program. For ReCirc, this meant that it was it took some time to figure out where is then the alignment between Singapore and the Netherlands. And what we decided to focus on is 4 different pillars that would substantiate this public-private partnership, and with which we would be engaging with Singaporean partners. So those 4 pillars would be plastics, incinerated bottom ashes, food systems, and used water and sludge. Let me proceed and see if I can get this working, as my screen is rather small. Admin, may I ask for your help? Yes, thank you.
Singapore and the Netherlands believe that the path to a truly sustainable future begins with our shared ambition to a zero-waste strategy in our transition towards a circular economy. We face the common challenge of having a high population density and a lack of space. Space we need to use intelligently to maintain a healthy standard of living and preserve the economic prosperity of the Dutch and Singaporeans alike. To fulfill circular ambitions, we need to become increasingly self-sufficient and face the challenges in demand and dependency on resources, the effects of climate change, and waste-related problems. Singapore is well on its way to optimize the interaction between water, energy, and food with the Zero Waste Master Plan and the Resource Sustainability Bill. The Netherlands aims to have a fully circular economy by 2050 and to reduce its use of materials by 50% in 2030. We actively stimulate collaboration between businesses, knowledge institutes, and government. This creates new circular value chains that produce practical, profitable, and sustainable results. International partnership is key to make the transition to a circular economy in our countries, to help accelerate our joint ambition. ReCirc, a public-private partnership of Dutch organizations, was established. In Singapore, an equivalent of 285,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of used water is treated and discharged every year. When treated, this high-quality water can be reused for irrigation of crops in food production, new water, and industrial water production. Some of our partners co-developed the water and resources refinery concept for high-quality water production and resources recovery from used water by the application of innovative physical-chemical technologies. To complete a circular concept, valuable resources are recovered. Nutrients are recovered for agricultural and chemical application. Organics are recovered for bio-based chemical and bioenergy production. And cellulose for biocomposite and material production. Together, we can explore similar circular concepts that fit the local situation. Concerning the issue of waste, the ReCirc partners can design and implement circular waste systems to reduce the amount of landfill residues by upcycling solid waste, metals, and the ashes that result from waste and sludge incineration. Upcycling waste is essential because at the current rate, the Semakau landfill will run out of space by 2035. By analyzing waste streams, the ReCirc partners can develop zero-waste strategies and find new purposes for these materials. The ReCirc partners develop insights from the circular flows by creating blueprints of systems for water, materials, and food flows. Systems to feed agriculture or aquacultures were already successfully implemented in the Netherlands, Indonesia, and other locations worldwide. The Netherlands looks forward to team up with Singapore. We provide training in circularity through a variety of workshops. We offer circularity scans, integrated sustainable solutions, technology, consultancy, and smart engineering. Let's fulfill our shared ambition. We are ready to meet the challenge of creating a circular economy head-on together.
Sorry, I was still muted. Thank you so much. This was indeed our video, which is always easier by means of introduction than talking you through a lot of slides with a lot of text. As I am my own timekeeper today, I will skip some of these slides and also give the other speakers some time to present. What I would like to stress is that over the course of the past year, and then of course since COVID happened, we have been compiling all of our results and have been broadcasting that through a series of webinars. Those are available and the links are available in the slides. So they're online. So if you want to see what we have been up to till date on these 4 pillars, including this webinar, then you can go to our YouTube channel and refer to that. And with that, I would like to proceed and I would like to give the word to Johan Premont. He has been working very hard on executing the Memorandum of Understanding on the government-to-government level. So Johan, if you would further introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, San. Thank you for having me here speaking to you. I still don't see my slides. Do I need to do something for that? Ah, there they are. And then I'll click to the next one because this is about the MOU, but it's also about me. What you see in the picture is a silhouette of the Netherlands and Singapore. My job is to actually interact, share and learn what we know and what we develop in circular economy. So we are both in our own way type of frontrunners in circular economy. The Netherlands shares a lot of what they learn and of what they develop in their own country, but also internationally. But it's also important to get back what other countries are developing. That's one of the reasons behind this MOU. The MOU has several topics of interest. One of them is circular economy. The aims in that circular economy part are about sharing on circularity. So it's about promotion, it's about specific issues around resource recovery and recycling, giving the Singaporean issue with your waste management island, and it's about the policies on 3 R's, or in the Netherlands we say sometimes we have 10 R's or 12 or 24, but it's about whatever you do between the first mining of your resource and the last step in recycling. Whatever you can do in between is important for circular economy. The MOU is it's about collaboration between governments, but it's also about being supportive towards this specific public-private initiative called ReCirc, because This is a solution-oriented partnership that helps illustrate what we want in our policies, but that also deserves a position, a podium, a stage, if you want, to showcase and demonstrate what's already out there. Circular economy is not a theoretical exercise. It's practicing as we speak. It's happening around us, and we can be part of it. And that's basically the aim. So what I see here is not the slide I thought I had next, but we'll see how this goes. The Dutch policy history, that's an interesting, I need to close something, I'll get distracted by my own screen, sorry for this. A little bit about Dutch policy history, because around 150 years ago, on a municipal level, we started collecting waste. And we needed to do that because of public health issues, right? It was, we were spreading diseases with our waste, so we needed to manage that somehow. It took us 100 years to do it like that, and then in 1975, around that time, we started using the arguments of the environment. It was about pollution, it was about cleaner air, cleaner land, cleaner water, and we started to manage our waste in a more regional level, more focusing on control and on technical solutions on what we could do with our waste. Then in the 1990s, still previous century, we started talking about resource management, and we started integrating our waste policies on a national level to see what we could do with everything we picked up as waste. And only recently, in the Netherlands around 2013, we adopted a circular strategy, which actually is not a waste management strategy anymore, because it's about waste prevention. It's about what can we do to prevent waste from happening so we can use all our resources as long as possible. We have a policy plan, an action plan for 2050, which aims for 100% circular economy in the Netherlands. That's a difficult aim to have, because we are completely depending on other countries as well, but we're working on that. And we want to be halfway in 2030. So that's very important to understand. We have a government policy on becoming circular, actually moving away from waste management to resource management, to recycle, reduce, reuse, whatever we have available at the highest value level possible. Circular economy is about system thinking, and that's an important thing in all the discussions that we encounter. That's why I took this slide and put it in. It's about mining of resources and using renewable resources, secondary materials. It's about designing and producing your products in a better way. It's about longer use and more often use and reuse, stretching the lifetime of products, and end of life, ideally, about recycling everything. That's not the case. We still have waste, and we will have that for a number of years, but maybe 20, maybe 50, maybe even longer. Waste incineration is needed, but it will get less and less, because we want to grow more into circularity, into reusing whatever we have. Circular economy is not about waste, as I said. Circular economy is about preventing waste. Circular economy is not even only about materials. Circular economy is also about carbon emissions. It's about creating jobs. It's about less land and water use. It's about less pollution. It's a systemic approach, which mainly actually is about collaboration in the value chain of any product, of any material, between organizations, between public and private institutions, and between countries. That's why I'm a big fan of this MOU that we have, and also of ReCirc, because it's showing that if we work together, we can set steps towards solutions. Collaboration is key, like I said, and basically that's about it's coming from the growing world population, as we all know, and for us it means we need to be smarter in the design and use of our products. We need to use less resources for the same needs and products. We need to be conscious in how we use them and how long we use them. So extend the product life. And we need more and better reuse and recycling of materials. In the end, hopefully we get to a system where waste could be just another source of materials for production instead of a source for incineration. I think this is around my last slide, and it's a brief calendar of what's going to happen from now on the government part of ReCirc. We are organizing an online study visit, so people from Singapore will come to the Netherlands, have a view and demonstrations on what's possible, technology, policy, having discussions on that. So it will be very interesting somewhere after summer, a few days of visiting Dutch solutions, Dutch practice, Dutch demonstrations. We will also organize at least 2 webinars on specific topics. These topics will be in the range of like repair facilities or procurement or design or extended producer responsibility. That's up to decide yet, and we're doing that together with NEA, the National Environment Agency. And what we want to, and this is still under construction, but what we really want to is leave a legacy, create a legacy coming from the MOU and ReCirc, creating a relation network between our countries, but also open for others to keep on sharing and learning together on circular economy, exchanging the best practices, having workshops over to both sides, and mainly work on connections and collaboration, because that is key in circular economy. We need to be open for this kind of stuff, and we feel that a network like this, hybrid as we know it already, can fulfill an important task in that. So thank you for your attention. You'll get the slides, so you'll have my email address when you find the last slide of this presentation. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Johan, for explaining how we have been working together and how we have been supported on a governmental level, and how it goes into work when such a memorandum of understanding between countries needs to be executed on a practical level. As mentioned before, as part of our public-private partnership, the knowledge-to-knowledge component is a very important part. So to develop the knowledge that the businesses that are involved can actually base their propositions on or develop projects for. So for our next speaker, who I would like to introduce, is Dr. Kees Roest. He represents KWR Water Research Institute, and he has been in the lead of many of our knowledge-to-knowledge, as we dub them, activities. Kees, can I give the floor to you to further introduce yourself and explain more about how knowledge-to-knowledge collaboration works as part of a public-private partnership like ReCirc?
Thanks, Sam, and also thanks for the previous speakers, because I think my presentation will follow nicely after the message of share and learn of Johan Prummel, because we worked on knowledge-to-knowledge activities, and that's really learning from and with each other, and working together from the Netherlands with Singapore and the other way around. So we performed a city blueprint framework approach, which I will shortly show. We have investigated material flows in Singapore and the Netherlands, and we have created a community of practice to learn from each other and with each other, and also to continue with this, as Johan just mentioned, in the coming time. To start this material flow analysis and the city blueprint framework, we published a report. So the link to the report and the website is on this slide, and the slides can be shared if you leave your email in the chat, or to one of the presenters or organizers of this webinar. But to go quickly through it, so the city blueprint approach works about trends and trends and pressures, also the performance of the city on the water management, and the governance can be included. And we focused in our knowledge-to-knowledge study on the first two aspects, which I will quickly show in the next slides. So for trends and pressures, serious concern. As you probably know and can also see in this slide, in the Netherlands and in Singapore, we have actually favorable social conditions and also a stable and reliable governance context. We have quite good financial resources, so low financial pressure, but still some aspects are of concern. For example, in the Netherlands, about biodiversity, because we have also a small country, highly populated, and nature is under pressure, so also biodiversity is really an issue. And I think both countries are low-lying countries, so sea level rise is an issue, as well as river peak discharges. And also in Singapore, especially, freshwater scarcity is an issue. So we already took actions in Singapore, but even in the Netherlands, we have to be careful about this, because our summers can be quite dry with climate change. Then to the city blueprint performance, there also 24 indicators are used, where 0 is a concern and 10 is no concern. And these indicators are relevant for the whole water cycle and chain. So here you see the results of the Netherlands and Singapore. So the slide on the slide, it's a bit small, but as mentioned, you can get the report and the results if you follow the link or if you contact us via email or other means. Comparing the Netherlands and Singapore with each other, then you can see that on several aspects we are performing both very well. But still we can learn from each other. For example, in the Netherlands we have quite a good solid waste management. And also in the current times with COVID and the COVID detection, that can be done in the sewage to keep track of this virus. So that's something we can offer to each other. And especially also Singapore is performing relatively low on energy and resource recovery from the water. So water utilities, for example. And we also arrange green deals. And this can be an example, and it can also be done together with Singaporean parties. So here is really an opportunity to work together. So then switching to the next part of our knowledge-to-knowledge activities, we did a material flow analysis in Singapore and the Netherlands. And these material flow analysis are interesting to apply, especially because we would like to transfer from a linear approach to a circular approach, where we reuse materials. So then insight into the materials that are going around in our society is very important. This is just an example about food waste, and our next speaker will go further into detail about also the food waste and the possibilities to recover components, which is also very important for Singapore with the 30-30-30 aim, and of course the zero waste approach. And then in this slide, just a summary of the material streams we investigated. So incinerated biomass, plastics, food waste, and also from the water cycle we investigated, at least in the Netherlands, and for Singapore we had a little bit less information, so that's still a topic to continue. So insights we got from this study is that still a lot of the waste we produce in both Singapore and the Netherlands is not yet utilized. So it's so-called in stock. So it's, for example, stored or incinerated. And to enhance circularity, we really would like, and we really should use this so-called waste, because there are many resources that can be used and reused and utilized. And as I mentioned, still with these material flows, there are still some gaps. So it's an opportunity to get more knowledge about these streams to close cycles. Now I will give some examples about possibilities. So, for example, with incinerated bottom ash, one of our partners in ReCirc Singapore is the Blue Phoenix group, where they use the waste from municipal waste, mixed waste, which is still often incinerated. That gives, of course, steam or heat and electricity production, so that can be utilized. But also the incinerated bottom ash can be processed, and many important materials like nutrients and metals can be recovered. And also the ash after washing with advanced technologies can be used for constructions, for example, and then it does not need to be landfilled, which is also a problem in Singapore and the Netherlands alike, because we have small countries and we don't want to landfill to have zero waste and circularity. Another interesting example is artificial intelligence driven design. This has been done in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, by Organic Village, where the phosphorus streams have been deeply investigated, and this results in possibilities to really recover and reuse the phosphorus, and thereby also reducing costs dramatically in the cycle. So that's very interesting and can be applied by our partner Organic Village, and many of the aspects that we use in this kind of software-driven investigations also demand the knowledge of many other partners in ReCirc Singapore. So I guess that this until now also shows that there are many opportunities to transition to a circular economy, and for that we need to work together. So as the message in the previous by the previous speaker and by myself, learning with and from each other, that gives opportunities for applying best practices that are sometimes already applied in Singapore, also sometimes applied already in the Netherlands, and we can apply it after that in both our countries and improve circularity. And some of the nice examples are also on the Holland Circular Hotspot. And as mentioned before, it's also important that we created a so-called community of practice, where we can work together and promote innovative entrepreneurship and business opportunities for organizations in the Netherlands and Singapore, and closed cycles in the water and wastewater streams, in the food and system, incinerated bottom ash, plastic waste, and integrate this into our societies. So last April, 29th of April, we launched our community of practice, and we still are growing and continuing this community of practice, and hope that many of you in the audience also will like to share and contribute to the community of practice, and then also learn with and from each other. And here are a few of my colleagues that also did a big part of these K2K activities at KWR, but also many others in ReCirc Singapore and in our consortium are working on this and are open to join with you in Singapore to both work on zero waste and circularity. And with that, I would like to end my part of this presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kees, for explaining to us how broad, but also how important the knowledge component of such a public-private partnership actually is. So what we have seen is on one side how important the research part is and how that leads to mass flow analysis, how that leads to a city blueprint, but then also how the commercial organizations within that partnership can then start developing tools and big projects like the incinerated bottom ash project that is live currently, or artificial intelligence tools to be on the verge of what new technology might bring. One of the other components that we haven't looked into yet, but that our next speaker will lead us through, is how can we then further on in specifically two of these four pillars that we have been discussing. So what kind of integrated zero waste solutions in used water and sludge and food systems might be available for further follow-up after everything that has been developed over the past years? And for this, I would like to give the word to Wilfred Appelman, representative of Wageningen Food and Bio-Based Research, as he can take us through the research that is currently being wrapped up, if I believe.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, Sam, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Wilfred Appelman. I'm working at Wageningen University in Research, and we are conducting a study to resource recovery solutions for both water, so what's in the water, the nutrients and the valuable materials, and also food waste valorization. Yeah, and then you can think of organic fertilizers, for example, biopolymers, cellulose, for example, nutrients, and especially when you look at food waste and all kinds of food applications, and of course biogas converting into energy. So water and food. So our presentation is consisting of two parts, covering the two topics. And when you look at wastewater and sludge, yeah, then you really look at, for example, in the phosphorus, in the cellulose, in the biomass present in the biopolymers. These were our target components. We did a study with the ReCirc partners. We also used the students for that to identify the technology state and the levels, business opportunities, but also the drivers and the constraints for that in Singapore, and also comparing it to the situation in the Netherlands. For the food waste valorization, we did the same. And yeah, for food waste valorization, what can you think on? Yeah, you can, for example, bread collection in Singapore is already quite large, but also converting bread waste, for example, into beer. Collecting coffee grinds, for example, to using projects with mushrooms, producing mushrooms or proteins. But also fatty acids, for example, from food waste. It can be reused into valuable materials. So I'm going to zoom in to the resource recovery for water. Yeah, and those four components, the target components, and what you see is in, for example, developing technologies that are, for example, technologies being able to get phosphorus out from the wastewater which is rejected, but also from the sludge you're producing, and even from the incinerated sludge. For example, you can reuse the phosphor in that. For the biomass, yeah, it is already quite established to use biomass into sludge digested into biogas, for example. But there are new projects and developments, for example, using algae growing on that. And even more, for example, biopolymers is now a new initiative. You can, in the Netherlands, you can take out the PAH, the polyhydroxyalkylates, for example, as a very useful biopolymer from the biomass. And there are also new strategies to explore, for example, the cellulose, which is being collected from the wastewater, and how can we use it as a construction material. To give a practical example, and I believe that Arjen will tell more about it. For example, this is a new initiative set up in the Netherlands, and it's actually a wastewater treatment plant, but not using the current standard biological treatment processes, but it's really using physical chemical processes to refine the water and to get out the components in their original forms. For example, you can retrieve the cellulose, you can make organic fertilizer, you can use the PAH, the plastics, you can take them out, and you can in the end also recover the phosphates. And there are many more processes in this setup, and in the end you have clean water, and you also have recovered your valuable materials in the water in not sludge, because you're not producing as sludge anymore, and you can reuse that. For the situation in Singapore, there's also being studied. Yeah, we got also a state of the art, and what is there, for example, the potential. The aim is to increase the current level of use of the biomass into biogas by the sludge process, for example. And there is a lot of potential in that. For example, the plants at towards Nexus, for example, yeah, that is really scaling up this kind of production. Also, the constraints are there because the market drivers, the pool from companies who are using this kind of components, yeah, that has to be developed at this moment in Singapore. What was our conclusion? But it is there. But we see a lot of potential also, for example, the biopolymers and the cellulose. And when you increase the market value of the products and you have the technology installed, then it's really useful development, becoming more circular. Now, for so much the situation on the wastewater and the water recovery of resources in Singapore. For the food waste valorization, we also did a study, and what you saw in Singapore last year, that there was about 656,000 of tons of food waste being generated, and it was consisted of almost half originating from the households and other half from the conversion industry, and only a limited part now is being recycled into animal feed. And what you now see is that there are currently licensed food waste recycling companies. They are licensed and they can collect and valorize the food waste streams, but it's only focused now at the homogeneous waste streams from the industry, because the households, yeah, it's a very difficult stream to process. You have a lot of packaging also, for example, and other waste. And initiatives on food waste valorization for this moment are yeah, little, but for example, it can be converted into biogas. An example is the Urupandan plant, and it's about 12 tons a day. And there are plans now to scale it up to 400 tons a day towards Nexus. But what we did is that we looked at the drivers from what is now what are the drivers for food waste valorization, and there's really a lot. There is this zero waste master plan. There are a lot of public organization incentives for new initiatives stimulating that. The NEA, there are all kind of grants and subsidies, and the aim is now to reduce the waste amount and not send it to the incineration plants. And what you can do is that you can use the order of prevention, for example, and you want to prevent the food waste being generated. You can redistribute it in the excess food. You can recycle the food waste, and in the end, you can recover the energy from the food waste, for example, by incineration of digestion. Yeah, and what were now the challenges we saw? You already saw 2 times a little bit and food waste inventory, but at this moment, we also notice with the meetings we have with the companies and the stakeholders in Singapore that there is not a very good overview of the food waste being generated in Singapore. And if the awareness on what is being generated and what is being useful, for example, in the food supply chain, there's also little awareness on what you can do with it. The technological advancements will not be picked up. Also, a situation in Singapore is that operational costs are very high because of labor. You have labor issues, the space is very costly. So there are a few opportunities, for example, especially the mixed streams for the households to have them reprocessed. Yeah, and that is really a challenge. Also, what can you do with the end products, for example? You can reproduce it, repurpose it. And you also have to get approval from, for example, the Singaporean Food Agency, certifications, halal or other ISO standards to have it safe and being sustainable, being reprocessed. And what we identified, there are certainly opportunities for new businesses collaborating in Singapore, and especially, for example, on fruit and vegetable waste streams, and also liquid waste streams, for example, from dairy plants. And in the Netherlands, there are already several initiatives for that, and that could also be picked up in Singapore. And these opportunities, it's advisable to use collaborations and partnerships with already present companies and collaborations in Singapore, companies which are licensed, and they already have the experience for that. And if you do that, then you get develop new partnerships and strategies to valorize products, even in human consumption, for example. So that's for now, and we are still working on it. The results will become available in the ReCirc project, and it's quite extensive. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Wilfred, for sharing, as you have been conducting a lot of research and also have been involving students on the Singaporean side. So I think it's a very, very innovative and also a very inspiring approach on how to also prepare the next and upcoming generation on how to think about these food systems and how we can actually reach those goals of Singapore 30 by 30 together. So thank you for sharing. Before we dive into the panel discussions, and I see that there is quite some Q&A coming in already, so please, all those watching and attending, please provide us with more questions if you have any. But before diving into that part, I would like to give the word to Dr. Arjen van Nieuwenhuizen. He has many roles that he operates under. Two of the most important ones that I would like to mention right now is that he is not only the R&D and Innovation Director for Circular and Bio-based Solutions at Witteveen and Bos, but he has also been the coordinator of this public-private partnership. So without collaborating with Arjen intensively, our public-private partnership would never have gotten to the point where it currently is. So from those two roles, I think he will be sharing on an exemplary project that was established in the Netherlands and how that might work moving to the future in Singapore. Arjen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, San. Working in this cooperation, indeed, the liaison and the coordinator are working closely together. It was a pleasure to me to work with you, San, so thank you very much for that for the last 3 years, as with the other partners in this interesting cooperation. My name is Arjen van Nieuwenhuizen, and San introduced me already, and I will be talking about a new initiative that has been developed in the Netherlands on used water, the water and resource refinery. The water reuse refinery concept is a completely paradigm shift of handling used water related to the circular economy. It is aiming at closing water cycles and resource valorization, and at the same time doing carbon emission reduction and bio-based and circular economy approaches. And with that, this technology or this concept is also in line with the transition towards the Green Plan 2030 for Singapore and the ambitions to become a circular zero waste nation, either for the Netherlands or Singapore. The concept was developed between 2018 and 2020 with the proof of concept in the Netherlands with several ReCirc partners. I will show them later on in the slides. And currently, the idea and the concept is being prepared for full-scale operation by designing and building a 50 cubes per hour demo plant from where it will be extended to a 200 cubes per hour plant. Next to the design and proof of concept, we also have developed feasibility studies on this concept for about 7 plants, 3 of them in the Netherlands and 2 international. And for Singapore, this could also be done in the future. And then we are focusing especially, for example, for the Mandai water nexus and energy and resources ambitions to see how that would work for Singapore. And at the same time, we can also think about applications on Jurong Island for industrial applications, where we also feed the products we produce directly to the chemical industry or the gas and oil industries in Singapore to boost their circular economy. So why did we do that? We were challenged by some Dutch water boards as they saw that conventional activated sludge plants and side stream treatment systems produce significant amounts of greenhouse gases by their processes itself. So not by related to the energy demand and the chemical demand, also the processes emit a lot of greenhouse gases. And as they became more energy neutral by applying renewable energy sources, these emissions are more and more important to reduce the total emission for the water boards. And at the same time, these conventional processes, they eliminate potential viable resources like organics, cellulose, ammonia, and phosphates that Wilfred talked about, also identified in their study. So we are challenged by water companies and water boards to produce ultra clean water for either processed water production or drought prevention, for example, and at the same time recover resources instead of converting them. And at the same time, we should be taking care of the CO2 emission, the overall CO2 emission of this process. And being water utility, it also needs to be robust, flexible, and affordable, looking at life cycle costing. So that was a big challenge together. We did that with a lot of partners. Our partners, I'm from Witte Van den Bos, KWR, Nijhuis, Royal Haskoning and DHV, and launching customers like Waternet and Waterschap Vallei en Veluwe. So we were looking for a complete new solution, which is a completely physical chemical separation and extraction plant. So we are focusing on resource refinery, and water in this case is also a resource in our view. We don't apply biological conversion and degradation, so we don't emit CO2 by the processes. We use electricity and we use some chemicals that have a footprint, a CO2 footprint, but if we do electricity by renewable energy sources, that will be eliminated, and the chemicals we are using will be turned over into products that will be fed to the bio-based and circular economy again. And at the same time, we were challenged to produce a very high quality of water to use that. So this concept has been proven in a demo plant of 5 cubes per hour in 2019, 2020, designed and operated and proven by Witte Van den Bos and RHDHV. The plant was built by Nijhuis Industries, one of our partners, and funded by Waterboard Vallei en Veluwe, European Life Subsidy, and STOA, the Dutch umbrella organization for water research. Launching customers are very important to do this, since they want to have solutions for their challenges, but they also are important for us as companies and ReCirc as a concept to be able to show these examples. The concept also won quite some interesting prizes, and we are doing R&D to design and build to make it really future-proof and applicable in practice as soon as possible. Shortly looking at what the water refinery and resource refinery is doing then. After conventional pretreatment and splitting the stormwater and the dry weather flow, we are pre-treating by the water with fine sieving. Our partner Certec provided a fine sieve there to protect the installations and to show produce cellulose for upcycling for biocomposite, green activated carbon, and biochar, for example. After this first stage, we have a very important part, that is the electrocoagulation and flocculation, where we produce flocks, and that will be removed by a dissolved air flotation of NIAS Industries. The coagulation and flocculation is important, and the removal of flocks, for the next step, the nanofiltration. The precipitation of phosphorus, metals, and complex organics is taking place here. And with this concentrate stream we produce by the flotation unit, we have potential of biogas production, fatty acids, and bioflocculants, and maybe in the future bioplastics. So the core of this installation is the tubular direct nanofiltration system, a new development developed by NX Filtration, where we split everything larger than 400 Daltons from the water phase and have a very high quality water, only consisting of ammonia and some monovalent ions. This water can be used directly for processed water, for example, irrigation and other purposes where you require very clean water. And the good thing of the hollow tubular direct membrane filtration is that it can deal with quite high suspended solids, which is very new for nanofiltration in this card. So the water board also required us to remove the ammonia. And ammonia was also seen as an important fertilizer. So next to the phosphate that we can recover as a fertilizer, also the ammonia is being produced as a concentrate by a double-stage ion exchange, where we remove the ammonia with sulfite and produce a concentrated ammonia stream of 5 grams per liter NH ammonia sulfide. And the remaining water, you see that in the table, is of very, very good composition that can be used for processed water, industrial water, and irrigation, and potentially even as a source for drinking water. So the next phase in this whole development will be the resource streams to be processed further in the bio-based products and, for example, building materials. And within the ReCirc partners, we already have the Blue Phoenix group in place here, where we can use the incineration ashes from these processes that will be there for metal recovery and construction material. We have fertilizers like for phosphate and ammonia, and we can use the cellulose for activated carbon, pyrolysis oil or bitumen. And for that, we have Aqua Minerals from the Netherlands involved already. So we are ready to design. We have the designs ready on different scales, so we can do it on a very small scale, industrial processes, but also on the municipal processes on a large scale, and we can have the designs ready for you if you want. So contact us at ReCirc Singapore to show if there are any opportunities to develop this process for Singapore. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arjen, for making it so concrete on what can be done and how such a collaboration leads to tangible projects. With this, we have finalized our presentations, and before we will be moving into the Q&A, I would like to have like a brief recap of everything that has been shared. So what we have seen is that for such a public-private partnership to succeed, it's not only cross-country collaboration. So two countries with different policies and different stages of development wanting to find each other in the field of something as complex and technical as resource recovery. How does that go about? How does it work if then a government that extends its support? What kind of activities may you develop under such an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding between two countries? And how is it then possible to involve the knowledge-to-knowledge component? So I'm very happy to have been hearing from both government representatives and after of knowledge institutes, both on the commercial side, but also on university representative. And finally, then seeing how that turns into business opportunities, making sure that it's not only in line with policy on a resource level relevant to all of the both countries involved, and then on the execution level also has to make sense business wise. So the total consortium consisted of 14 parties. And for all of them, there is a different interest that needs to be served. So the past years have been quite a complex way of finding a way forward in mutual partnership, mutually beneficial partnership. So when opening the discussion, I'm very happy to have all the speakers joining again so that we might dive into the questions that have been put into the platform. And with that, I think I can pick the first question. Yes, I have a question, and I would ask that question to Arjen to start with. Arjen, what were your biggest takeaways of working together in such a consortium, and what do you envision for future collaboration?
Yeah, basically, when we started this this initiative, looking at resource recovery to boost circular economy for the Netherlands and Singapore, we focused very much from the water perspective. We were talking with Mark van Loosdrecht and André Strucker, Mark van Loosdrecht from Delft University, André Strucker from Waternet, and several people from PUB. And that was a quite silo approach. We were only looking at the water part. And the good thing is, with this whole consortium we have developed here, that we covered much more the real circular economy of a nation by also looking at waste and the food systems, for example. And that created the integrated approach of circular economy and the added value for the development of the whole program. So we could never have done that alone as water companies and consultants and maybe one university. To have the broad perspective from different kinds of universities, research institutes, and companies, together with the ministries and also our Singaporean partners, that made it really interesting and much more important to develop.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that this allows me to bring in the next question, and I would ask that to Johan. A question came in from Ryan Wen about why the need for such a private-public partnership exactly in Singapore. Oh, you're still muted.
I saw that. From my understanding, why would we need a public-private partnership in Singapore? Is that the question?
Yeah, what was the underlying need of developing this exactly for Singapore or between the Netherlands and Singapore?
Okay. I think basically if any company from the Netherlands want to go abroad, at least outside of Europe, to develop not only their business, but also their knowledge and their contacts and their network. The Dutch government feels that it's important to support that, because whatever is good for Dutch companies is also good for the Dutch economy. That's a simple reasoning. If you go more in depth, it's a bit like Ruud said when he opened. We are such typically equivalent countries struggling with water from all sides, being densely populated. We are innovators and frontrunners in our own region. So we have so much in common that it makes sense. It makes, let's say, double sense for us as a government to support business initiatives that one way or the other could help not only the Dutch companies, but also the Singaporean companies, and would create set steps in building a relationship between our two governments. Because we are so similar, there's so much to share and learn from each other. I think basically that's the reason why we support other initiatives as well, but we're very fond of this initiative between the Netherlands and Singapore.
Okay, there's another question coming in that actually links quite well to your answer just now. It's a question by Mien Ling. It says that one of the challenges in Singapore could be the limited market or off-takers for potential products that are produced. So indeed, if we are then looking back at these years of research and development and bringing it to market, proof to concept, how do you see the phase of actually bringing it to the market? I think Arjen, that would be a question for you.
I can answer to that, but I'm also very interested in what Wilfred has to say about that.
Okay, sure. Let's redirect it to Wilfred.
Yeah, let me first. This is indeed a very important question. If you also want to make a financially interesting proposal by these more expensive technologies, for example, that you need to apply to make this resource factory or resource refinery possible. And also that counts for a lot of actions in the circular economy, that you have to invest upfront quite a lot to make it interesting for the long term. And then you need revenues also by selling off your products. And then, for example, what we are doing with fertilizers in the Netherlands is indeed a challenge for Singapore. But on the other hand, with the food plan of Singapore, you also see urban farming more and food production in and around Singapore. And we could, for example, produce fish feed from it instead of artificial or fertilizer for crops. Or we can produce the nutrients exactly for the aquaculture systems where we produce very specific urban farming concepts. So it's a very important question, which is also not solved in the Netherlands completely. Technology is not the issue there. It is mostly legislation and indeed the financial effect, the cost effectivity of these kind of renewable or bio-based products.
And you do not see currently that the scale of the market in Singapore would have a negative impact on this?
Yeah, if for example, with what we do from the used water related to, for example, the fertilizer and the composting ideas, also from the food waste, then a larger agricultural sector would be interesting for that kind of concept. That's indeed. We were also talking with partners like NEAs about if you would apply this in Singapore. You can do it on your own within Singapore as much as possible, but international cooperation will be necessary somehow to boost also the overall circular economy. That's the same with the Netherlands. We cannot do it ourselves. We need our neighbors also in Europe and even within the UK, I presume. So circular economy is not within borders. It's within different kinds of sectors, but also with different kinds of countries.
Okay, thank you, Arjen. Wilfred, could you maybe hook on to this answer based on your research then? Oh, I'm still muted.
Excuse me. Now, what Arjen already explained, it's really a field of in a large movement, the circular economy and all the initiatives. And what we saw in our project, the Northern Knowledge Project, working with the students and interviewing all kind of stakeholders, is that it's really taking off now. And the companies we spoke, for example, who were doing pioneering work, they did it together with the government, with the NEA and the SFA, for example, on the black shoulder flies and yeah, which strains can you reuse for food and what not, and food waste, and also the awareness. We also noticed that if you don't know what's available as a resource, for example, then it's also not taking on. So I think this ReCirc initiative is now building on increasing that awareness, also helping the companies to join and to initiate the new developments, and that can really help. And that was also the question we got from the stakeholders from yeah, which people do you want, do we have to contact? What do we have to do? What are the opportunities? not only in the ReCirc partners themselves, but also outside. Also in the Netherlands, other companies we spoke on food waste valorization, on resources from water and sludge. And there is quite a lot of interest. So I think it will take off. This project, ReCirc, helps, but also the community of practice, which will continue after ReCirc. There are really very useful networks.
So would one of the takeaways be that the current status of where we stand when it comes to, for instance, food waste valorization would be in the development of the market and actually matching the demand with the availability of resources?
Yeah.
So that's okay. That's an important takeaway. And I think that the partners can work with that. It might also be an open invitation for those watching that if there is indeed such an interest, to make yourself known. As this is something that we need to explore together and figure out together how that would work in Singapore. Moving on to the next case.
So this is a very interesting and important topic, of course. But I think also circularity and zero waste does not need to stop at the border of the country. And I think ReCirc Singapore is a nice example of that. We try to work together over the border with each other to close cycles. And for example, also in Singapore, a lot of food comes from outside of Singapore. So if you recover the nutrients, you can also bring these nutrients back to places where they produce the food. And if you see in the Netherlands, we have a lot of animals. We have a very big production of meat and animal products. So we have a surplus of phosphorus, and we are recovering phosphorus also from municipal sources. And we have to export this to other countries. For example, in Europe, where there are places where they have a lack of phosphorus. But there are many opportunities to close cycles, and it does not need to be limited to the border of the countries.
Okay, so if I would recap that, then one of the learnings would be that if we're thinking about geographies and we limit ourselves by country borders, then we're not taking full advantage of the scale, nor of the available volumes, for instance, of the feedstock and the potential offtake of this. So we need to much more tune into what is then that resource that is recovered, and where would it find its best application, and not so much thinking about that any circular economy needs to be able to close loops within one specific country.
Yes, I think so. Exactly.
Okay. So that leaves me to the following question. There's two that came in that have the same essence, I would say. The public-private partnership, as we have been discussing it, it has involved government, industry, knowledge institutes, but there is one component that we have not discussed yet, and we see that this is emerging in Singapore, and that is how to educate the public, or how to involve the consumer and the public. As we are very much like industry focused, maybe Kees, you can reflect on that, on how you would see that moving forward, how to broaden this approach to also involve the consumer side and the use cycle of these recovered resources.
So I did also with my colleagues in KWR another study about circular economy, and we believe that circular economy is more than only recovering resources from waste of waste streams, but it also is well-being and public health, of course. So it involves much more, and also much more topics that are related to the public itself, so to our daily lives. And if we want to close cycles, we need, for example, separation of certain streams. The best way to do that, or the best point to do that, is very often at the source, and that means also with the general public. By stimulating this, citizen science, for example, can help, and we get much more experience with these kind of interactions with the general public, and also to stimulate changing of behavior, which is very difficult to obtain, of course. But that's really needed if we would like to go to a complete society with closed cycles.
Yeah, what I find interesting then is that, of course, we are here all on a professional account, but in our daily lives, we are the consumers as well. So we are confronted with that side, but maybe we are not always aware of the fact that we actually are that consumer that we are discussing. Johan, could you give an example of how the involvement of the consumer side works well in the Netherlands? Or
Yes,
in one of the projects you're involved in?
There are several examples. I find this a very interesting question, maybe even a very intelligent question, because in the end, without consumers, customers, citizens, nothing will change and nothing will happen. So we need ourselves, as you said, we are consumers ourselves, we are citizens. I think it's very important to pay attention to education, to pay attention to behavior, and don't start with education only in the professional education, but we can start early on when children are 4, they can already learn what to throw away, how to throw it away, and what you could reuse, etc. Some interesting examples that we are developing right now in the Netherlands, for instance, are the repair hubs that we are creating. Actually, municipalities mostly are creating them. People used to throw every product that was broken, they used to throw it away. So if your telephone, if your smartphone is broken, you throw it away, and it will get incinerated and we will get some energy of it, but we won't be able to retrieve all the valuable materials in it. And what's happening now in the last few years, and it takes a bit of time, but in the last few years, people are getting used to having a product that can be repaired, then also taking it to a repair shop if available, but if not, to a repair facility like municipalities are building, where they can actually just, people who are, well, let's say the handyman of their own families and villages, they can repair quite a lot of stuff that can be used for another few years instead of being thrown away. And that's a very important step. And another thing to think about, we haven't done that in the Netherlands yet, but in France, another country in Europe, they agreed on a law where every product has the right of repairability, which actually is not a right but an obligation. So if you are the manufacturer, the producer of such a product, your customer has the right of repair. So you have to design it and develop it that it can be repaired, and you have to facilitate reparation of these products. And I think that's a development that will go quite fast in Europe and hopefully also outside of Europe, because this is a very close to the public step to take to not only create awareness about circular economy, but to directly feel the benefits and the impact of reusing better and using products longer, and thus using less virgin materials.
Okay, then I have a tricky follow-up question, but I dare ask you. So these consumer initiatives, they are super interesting, but they can come across as grassroots. I almost dare not use the word. How do you see those initiatives link into what we have been developing as ReCirc? Where do those two come together?
I think that the interesting thing of circular economy, and it has been said earlier by Case amongst others, it's a global system, but with local solutions. So for some products or materials, you need to connect to a global chain. Aluminium is something global. ICT industry is a global industry. And in the same time, there are these very nearby solutions, and what you can every loop you can close together with your neighbors is something you can do today. And everything you can't close on your own or in your village, you need to hook on bigger initiatives. I think one of the challenges, but also the charms of working in circular economy development is to support small initiatives to hook on to the bigger cycles, and in the same time to introduce the concept of small cycles into the bigger initiatives, right? We are poking in the ICT industry as we speak, because that's global and that's closed and that's difficult. And we can do so much in ICT on a local level, and that could be small private initiatives, citizens initiatives, or small public initiatives. Actually, that doesn't matter as long as we are able to connect all the different sizes and angles of the initiatives. Then together we can hook into each other's cycles and try to bring the small things on the larger scale if needed, and in the same time take the big scale cycles back to a smaller level if that's applicable. Is that answering your tricky question?
Well, this to me, it sounds like we need some sort of an infrastructure, or we need some sort of a framework that brings it together, that respects both the different levels and the different levels of education, of development, but still gets most out of the resource that we have available.
What's a very interesting thought to add, and everybody can look this up on the internet, there's this Dutch professor Jacqueline Kramer, and quite recently she wrote a book, and one of the main messages is we need transition brokers. We need people or small institutions that understand the connections between small and big, between public and private, between countries, and make the connections in order to close loops on the right level. And she calls them transition brokers. And I think that's an important, it's not a missing link, but it's a role that that's now being played sometimes by us as a government, sometimes by you as a liaison in a project, sometimes by Arjen being coordinator, and everybody takes this role every now and then. And it would be a good thing to coordinate a bit more on that, to have more valuable connections using a transition broker.
So one element of that, what we might need in such a transition phase, is something that I would like to zoom into with all of the panelists involved. It has been mentioned on several occasions. One of the things that we see as valuable moving forward after completing this cycle of working together for a couple of years now is that in the end of April, a community of practice has been launched, which involves stakeholders from both countries on all the 4 different pillars of content, but then also representatives from both government knowledge and industry. What I would like to spend a couple of minutes on is how we would see such a community of practice operate, and what would be next steps. So how can people that are attending right now, how might they be involved if they feel that they have a contribution to make in this transition? Potentially, Kees, as you were in the lead of developing this, setting up the framework of this community of practice, I could give you the word to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think the community of practice is extremely important to go to real actions, because it's very nice to have a seminar and to learn in this way from each other. But with a community of practice, we can really take steps with the stakeholders that are relevant. And as Joan Prummel just mentioned, we need to take actions also locally with knowledge and connecting to the global cycles. So with this community of practice, we can bring the people together, also locally in Singapore, share the knowledge and the needs with each other, and then take the next step to implementation with knowledge from Singapore and the Netherlands to close cycles and to work on circularity.
So this to me, it still feels a little bit abstract. How would you define a community of practice? What does it do?
So yeah, in short, it's actually local stakeholders. They bring their needs, their questions, and others can answer these questions in the same community of practice. So transferring knowledge from each other to solve the needs of other partners in the community. That's just in a nutshell how it can work, and hopefully will be applied as well.
So if there would be problem statements that participants or attendees would like to share, what would be the best way to get in touch with this community of practice?
So for the community of practice, we have a LinkedIn page where people can connect to the community of practice. So that will be a good way, of course, connecting to us as organizers, and bring in your questions, your needs, or also if you have nice solutions, then it's good to share these. So these needs and solutions can be connected, and that's the aim of ReCirc Singapore, and then also in the community of practice, that will be a legacy that goes on and develops to real zero waste and real circularity, I hope.
Okay, so for now we are inviting people to contact us via the LinkedIn page.
Yeah, that's a good way of linking. And if people leave their contact details for the slides of this webinar, we can also share the LinkedIn page, of course. That would be a good way forward.
So, Arjen, I think one of my final questions would then be for you. I think you already wanted to jump in, so I'll give you the word first before asking my question.
First question.
So within the last hour and a half, we have been trying to bring both across how does a public-private partnership work between two countries on different levels and on 4 different subjects. And now we are discussing how that might result into a community of practice, amongst other things. So maybe you could give a short recap of or overview, and then so that everybody is very clear in understanding what ReCirc has done till date and what will it move into and how does it connect to that community of practice?
Yeah, what ReCirc first of all did is creating a network with the Dutch and the Singaporean partners to explain what we are doing and what our plans in the Netherlands are and how that would fit into the ambitions of Singapore. And that was done a lot also on the governmental organization. So that was very important to understand each other. And at the same time, you see that Wageningen University and the universities in Singapore are now connected for resource recovery. So also there, we were looking for the connections to learn from each other. And that was mostly of importance there. And we see also this business approach is developing now. Also individual activities from the different companies in the ReCirc on the circular economy pathways for Singapore. So that also creates different kinds of showcases, and maybe that is something Johan was talking about legacy, developing a legacy from 3 years of ReCirc into a next phase where we have still a memorandum of understanding between the Netherlands and Singapore on this topic and a COP. And to my in my view, we should use a kind of these pearls that we will brush up to be diamonds at the end, and have nice showcases that we are, but coming from Singapore and from the Netherlands, to join each other, and then also bring information and solutions from Singapore to the Netherlands, and from the other side, from the Netherlands to Singapore, and create a COP also about the around the showcases. Netherlands Circular Hotspot has already done that, for example, for Netherlands cast. There's also a Singapore Circular Hotspot that could be a perfect fit in working together, also with the digital visit that Johan is preparing, that we are using this kind of interesting circular ideas, which are being made much more concrete with demos, with full-scale applications, and use this to discuss these COP issues. So that would be my suggestion for the follow-up for the future.
And is there one project in specific that you are particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, for Singapore, what we see is there are quite some interesting, very local developments on, for example, urban food related to circular economy. And in a bigger plant is, for example, the Mandai ambitions for Singapore, looking at a completely new area to develop something that is really a nexus approach between water, energy, resources, being ready for the circular economy in the future. So
okay.
the Mandai is really something, the Mandai project is really something that we think from ReCirc Singapore we can contribute by supporting NEA, by supporting PUB, but also the companies in Singapore to developing this.
Okay, so we have a lot to look forward to. With your answer, I feel we are at the end of our webinar, leaving me to mention one more time that we are accessible or easy to reach via LinkedIn, via the ReCirc Singapore page. As mentioned, presentation is available, slides are available, and we are actively looking to take this to the next step. So that might be one of the participants asking to develop the business model and the pricing for actually applying these resources. So yes, that's what we need to dive into. We need to take this now to the next step to actually see how to apply and how to make it into a business success as well, while continuing to nourish these government-to-government relationship, but also to keep on adding knowledge as developed by the knowledge-to-knowledge partners. With this, I would like to thank everybody very, very, very much for joining. And it has been a pleasure for the past years working with you all, and I cannot wait to see that future happen. So thank you very much. Thank you, speakers, and hope to be in touch in Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.